Hey y'all, it's your boyfriend Brandon, aka Beamer, and today we're talking about global pop groups versus X pop groups. Let's get into it. As you can see, I have some new hair. Okay, I have a new mic. Okay, it's not actually a new mic, it's actually a mic that I had for I want to say like 2 or 3 years. But I brought it out. I finally got my little system here all together. You can't really see the rest is on the side. But I really wanted to come and talk to you about X pop versus global pop. As you know, the global group XG recently came out with saying that their style of music is actually X pop. It's not K-pop, it's not J-pop. Even though a lot of the members are Japanese, they said that no, that's not what we are. We like to experiment, we like to break barriers. Unfortunately, J-pop doesn't do that for us. So we made this thing called X-pop. And we know the acronym for XG is Extraordinary Girls. So for them, they're saying that this is like extraordinary pop. And for me, because I've been watching a lot of videos talking about the change of K-pop and how K-pop has altered and expanded itself, now we're making all of these global pop groups. I wanted to come on here and talk and kind of give everybody some history on what global pop groups are, the actual definition, and then what is changing into today. So I'm getting my resources, one from Google, but also from Guinness World Records, The Craze, South China Morning Post, Kaboomzy, all K-pop stars, and then also information that I've had for over the years. When you type in Google, what is a global pop group? The first thing that comes up is that they are musical acts that achieve international popularity, significantly influenced by pop culture, and gain recognition across different countries. And with that definition, we get a lot of different pop group names that some of you might know and some of you might not know. Some of them I actually knew and some of them I was like, what? First claim global pop groups. And the reason why I say claimed is because the origin of the word actually comes from global village that was introduced by Canadian media theorist Marshall McLuhan in the 1960s. He used that term in regards to communication and technology and how it was shrinking the world, enabling instantaneous sharing of culture and information across vast distances. Now we're talking about the 60s. So the 60s, we were talking about like TVs and radio and stuff like that. We're no longer talking about just paper. We're actually being able to see and hear our favorite people. And now bring it into today's term, we have social media. We have our phones. We have text messaging. So we can really reach out to whoever instantaneously, like Marshall McLuhan said. So that's where the original term comes from. Now, the first claimed global pop groups were the Beatles, the Supremes, ABBA, the Bee Gees, Jackson 5, the Beach Boys, the Rolling Stones, the Monkees, the Carpenters, and the Platters. Now, the reason why they're considered global pop groups and coined that name was because they had a lot of influence crossing cultural, language, and geographic boundaries, including what they were doing within the music industry. They were dominating domestic markets outside of the US. For example, the Beatles, obviously they were a British group, and that's why they pioneered the British invasion within the US. They also had a huge influence on Japan, India, and Brazil, and their numbers also topped the charts over there. Then we have the Supremes, and they had a polished image and they crossed over, helping to establish Motown as a global force. And they were the first group to do that within Motown. They broke a lot of racial and cultural barriers, especially with Stop in the Name of Love. And as you know, if we ever watched Dreamgirls, you would know how the Supremes were being appropriated by other groups at the time. It wasn't just them, it was also male groups as well. But mostly the Supremes were the ones that were getting a lot of new renditions of their songs, making it kind of whitewash, if you will. And because it was getting whitewashed, it was having a lot of appeal elsewhere, or when people really wanted to figure out how do I know this song, but is not this particular song. People found the Supremes and then they were like, ah, I see. And that really helped their global international force. Now, if you know me, I love the Jackson 5. Okay, so I'm so happy that the Jackson 5 is in the top 5 of this list. Okay. But they also became the first African American groups to achieve mainstream global success, mostly because of Motown's international distribution now at the time. So this was after the Supremes, but now going into the era of the Jackson 5. And on top of that, they were a young group, whereas the Supremes were older at this point. Now, also the Bee Gees. How did the Bee Gees come into play? They had a lot of influence in markets like America, obviously Europe, Asia, and then Oceania. Come on. And then ABBA had Europe, the Americas, Asia, and Australia. So now we know the original definition came from Global Village. It was talking about reach amongst the artists to their fans. But now, how we're defining global pop group now is where people came from, like the different countries. And that is now considering them a global pop group. So the first pop groups to feature members from different countries, and I put these air quotes because it's not as expansive as we think so now. Again, I'm talking about from my own experience. They might have a lot of cultural differences, and it says that they do, but I'm not so sure. But these were the first pop groups that had members from different countries. So the first one is actually ABBA. So ABBA was active from 1972 to 1982. They had members from Sweden and Norway. And because of that, they had a lot of international success, breaking language and cultural barriers. Then we have Boney M. Now, I never heard of this group, but this was a German Jamaican group, or a German Caribbean group, a European Caribbean group that was formed in Germany but had members from the Caribbean. And so it was one of the first multinational pop groups to achieve global fame. And they were active from 1975 to 1986. So that's a little bit after ABBA, right? And then you had the New Seekers. So the New Seekers were active from 1969 to 1974. Now with this one, it's a little strange. I know there is a cultural difference, but they had members from the UK and Australia. Yes, cultural difference, but it's not vast like German and Jamaican, right? And then you have Ace of Base. Every time I say this name, it's kind of funny. And they had Sweden and Denmark. I don't know how much of a difference Sweden and Denmark has. But also it says here that they mostly had Swedish members, but they had a lot of Danish collaborators that helped extend their production and touring teams. So I don't really count that. Now we have Menudo. If you don't know who Menudo is, they've been around forever and they're still current today. They've been around since 1977, and they are a Puerto Rican group that later started to recruit members from other countries such as Mexico, Venezuela, and Brazil. Menudo became a launching pad for Latin American talent with a global fan base. I've known Menudo because they had a version that came out. They actually had a TV show searching for the next Menudo. And I thought they were really dope. I thought their music was really dope. I think they were like 2008, 2009 or whatever. But they didn't really do so hot. And then now they have even younger Menudo members. And I think the youngest is like 9 or 10. So you should really check them out. They're actually really pretty good. I mean, it's more kids boppy right now, but they're gonna eventually grow and hopefully don't change too quickly. We have some other ones that I'm just not gonna name. Then we have Spice Girls. Now, Spice Girls have been in everybody's mouth lately because they were considered a global pop group. However, they were all British. Now, because their image was different amongst the girls and they embraced a lot of global themes and had a lot of international audiences, people consider them a global pop group. And now we're talking about in regards to metrics, right? But also because they had like Scary Spice and blah, blah, blah. They also made an appeal to people, overseas outside of just their music, but as their individual selves. And then you also had S Club 7, also had UK members and Australian members. And now we're kind of getting into today, right? So you have BTS. They have a lot of South Korean members, but they gained a lot of international appeal. And this is where K-pop kind of comes in, and now we finally get to what XG was saying today. Then I was like, all right, well, if we know Boney M was the first multinational and multicultural pop groups, then what are some additional multi-pop groups that we're not thinking of? So Now United actually holds the Guinness World Records for having the most members from multinational identities. They have members from Brazil, India, South Korea, Senegal, the Philippines. They've been active from 2017 till now, and that's why they call it Now United. Another one is Blackpink. Blackpink has obviously South Korean because they're a K-pop group, and then Thailand, which is Lisa, and then New Zealand, which is Rosé. So they also have an appeal. Now, if we want to bring it back, they had One Direction, that had UK and Ireland. They had Girls' Generation, that had South Korea and the US. And the reason why I say the US like that is because they were primarily a South Korean pop group, but they had Tiffany and Jessica that were born in the US. So with Girls' Generation is kind of different, but also they had a lot of J-pop appeal, mostly because of their aesthetic and how they interacted with their fans, which was very J-pop, not as K-pop, but they still were very, very well known all across Asia. And then you have Super M, which also has the same thing, South Korea and US. Fifth Harmony, that has USA, and then Cuba, but also they have a little bit more that they're not expanding on. This is just like what we really know, but I think like Dina is like Dominican, I believe, and then Normani is from New Orleans, so she has like a little bit of Creole in her, and then Ali, I'm not sure what Ali is, but I'm pretty sure she's like Filipino. And then you have Little Mix that has UK, Jamaica, Exile that has Japan, and then they have a lot of international collaborations with other performers. Cinco, which disbanded, they started in 2015, but they had members from Ecuador, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Cuba, and the United States. They were trying to be kind of like a menudo in a way. And you have 21 that have South Korea and then Philippines, NCT that have South Korea, but then you have members from Japan, China, Thailand, Canada, and the US, but mostly are South Korean, and they have all those subunits. Halt! This was an interesting one. AKB48. I know AKB48 because they're primarily Japanese. They were based in Japan, and they had this huge J-pop appeal, right? Which is interacting with the fans, hugging, meet and greets, handshakes, all those things. But then the owner decided they were going to make subgroups as well, but started doing it everywhere. So they have so many sister groups. BNK48, JKT48, MNL48. So that's Thailand, Indonesia, and Philippines, and I'm pretty sure there's some more as well. Then you had 98 Degrees, mostly American, but then they had some Canadian collaborations and then some more international recognition. Twice, that has South Korea, Japan, Taiwan. Super Junior, that has South Korea and China. So the list goes on and on and on. So now I kind of want to rewind. Now remember when I said that I had my own information? Also information that I've had for over the years. Do we all know who Nicole Scherzinger is? I'm so sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, girl. I'm so sorry. Well, she was part of a global pop group called Eden's Crush, and that was before PCD. Eden's Crush had a show called Pop Stars, and it's really funny because technically they had more Latin roots than anything, but then you bring in Nicole that's from Hawaii, and then you also had Miley, who actually has a Hawaiian Filipino dad, and an Irish mom. They actually had a whole Spanish album, and nobody really talks about them. Their music was fire. I love it. I'm probably gonna do some singles of theirs and have fun on the channel, but they were a group that I thought was really international, really had this appeal. Unfortunately, the record label just folded over because they didn't have enough money. But they were making a lot of strides, and that's how we found Nicole, who later on had a bigger career. But the other girls also, don't sleep on them, they also had a lot of good careers. The other thing that I think made them so appealing, you had a Nicole, right? You couldn't really tell what Miley was. Then you had some swirlizations in there. And then you had, I hate to use this, but white passing. It gave them a lot of appeal, but they weren't white. They were half white. So it's Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo. That was a global pop group in my eyes back then. And then now we have people like Katseye, right? Katseye really is technically a global pop group, not only because of their outreach and their numbers, but also because of the members in their group. If we're talking about that, what is the difference between X-pop and global pop? And is this a new era of pop that we're feeding into? Is X-pop going to be like extraordinary pop, going beyond just people's identities, their industry reach? Are they going to be adding some more futuristic things in their music? Is that where we're kind of going with the X-pop thing? Or is it just like a marketing tool that XG is using to stand out? Now, a lot of people have been talking about, hey, K-pop is dying. Maybe K-pop is going to die out a little bit and this X-pop, global pop thing is going to happen, and when people get oversaturated with it, they're going to go back to K-pop. You know, I think that could work. But I also think that people are learning that K-pop has such a chokehold on the industry in regards to how they pull from so many different genres, even though it's considered Korean pop, and mostly because they're singing in Korean. But I also think that the Korean pop industry and the fans need to realize that anybody can sing in Korean, right? And it doesn't mean that you need to be Korean in order to do K-pop. It's the same thing with J-pop. It's the same thing with C-pop. It's the same thing with B-pop. You don't have to just sing the language. It's also being within the culture and following those cultural standards, or at least adhering to them in some capacity. And I feel like as long as members are doing that, they're appealing to their main audience. So like, for example, BlackSwan is another global pop group technically, but they're a K-pop group. They're a global pop group that's a K-pop group. Make sense? But they appeal mostly to the K-pop audience because of how they navigate their careers. But let's say they decided, hey, we're done with K-pop, we're going to go to J-pop. What I'm expecting from them is to have more of a hands-on connection that the J-pop fans like, which is the meet and greets and stuff like that. Or if they decided, hey, we're going to go over to the west side of the world and we're going to be more Americanized or whatever, then that means now they're really diving into social media. They're really doing a lot of concerts, and they're probably going to change a little bit of their music. That's what I think more matters. And I don't know if people and labels are going to make these global pop groups to just go into K-pop or vice versa, only because that's not what Americans like, one. So even if they wanted to do that, I don't think that's going to happen. But also, you would be losing a lot of K-pop fans. So what do y'all think? Where do you think that we're going? Please comment below. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you have any information that you want to put. Let me know, and maybe I'll make a part 2. But I think that we're missing out, and I'm glad that XG actually brought this X-pop thing to the forefront, because now we have more to talk about and more to really expect from them, honestly, especially because of their marketing, and also because they've had a lot of things going on with their group. So if y'all want to know more about that, also let me know. But I will see you later. Bye!